defensive. It is a capacity to absorb a blow and remain standing. Resurgence is forward-leaning. It is the decision to move with purpose, with ambition, with a vision of something greater than what existed before. We will not simply patch what is broken. We will build forward stronger, smarter, and more equitably than before. The suffering of our Western parishes will not be a footnote in our national story. It will be the catalyst for our next great chapter. For Jamaica, adversity has been a full stop. It has always, well, Madam Speaker, let me read that properly. For Jamaica, adversity has never been a full stop. Has never been a full stop. It has always been just a comma, a brief pause before we rise again. We have endured, now we will build together. Madam Speaker, this government is leveraging our national resilience and international confidence in order to translate it into a platform for accelerated national development. Through close engagement with our multilateral partners, including the IMF, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, CAF, and the Caribbean Development Bank, Jamaica secured US $6.7 billion in terms of a financial package within weeks of the hurricane. This is the largest and fastest mobilization of development financing in Jamaica's history, and it was made possible not by the hurricane, but by everything Jamaica had built before it. Madam Speaker, the discipline of yesterday is funding the resurgence of tomorrow. But financing alone is not enough. We must, as a country, confront an uncomfortable reality. While Jamaica has built one of the most credible macroeconomic frameworks in the developing world, the execution of large investment projects too often moves at a pace that belongs in another era. Layers of approvals, fragmented processes, and rigid procurement rules, though designed with good intention, can make it difficult to move quickly when transformational opportunities arise. In today's global economy, capital is highly mobile, and investors compare jurisdictions not only on stability and incentives, but on speed of decision-making and certainty of execution. Too often, promising opportunities have gone elsewhere, to countries that are simply more nimble. We cannot allow this to continue. Even recently, Madam Speaker, I have seen projects that were eyeing Jamaica. Investors got frustrated and have gone elsewhere. We are advancing two powerful and complementary reforms. One focused on how we build infrastructure and the other on how we attract and accelerate transformational private investments. NARA will have special powers, that is the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, will have special powers to accelerate development approvals as well as procurement, enabling the execution of resilient infrastructure projects at a scale and speed this country has never seen before. NARA is not only about project delivery, it is about project networking to create new economies in areas impacted by the disaster and to introduce the greatest expansion of our economy in the shortest period of time in our history. Madam Speaker, NARA will turn a crisis into an opportunity for Jamaica. One of the most important lessons of Jamaica's economic reform journey was that Execution requires not only institutional capacity, but credible, independent oversight. The Economic Program Oversight Committee, EPOC, became internationally recognized as a model of transparent, civil society-led accountability that gave Jamaicans and international partners confidence that the fiscal program was being implemented as agreed. We will use a similar model for NARA called JAMROC, that is Jamaica Reconstruction and Resilience Oversight Committee. And I'm pleased to announce that JAMROC will be chaired by Professor Peter Blair Henry, a son of Jamaica, who is currently a senior fellow at Stanford University's institution. He is a vice chair of the National Bureau of Economic Research. And I hear somebody say an academic, but listen to this part of it. A member of the boards of Citigroup and Nike, who has risen to the very pinnacle of international economics and public policy, and who brings back to this country a lifetime of intellectual and practical achievements and a personal commitment to Jamaica's development that has never wavered. The search for NARA's chief executive officer is also well advanced. Following an open advertisement, both locally and internationally, 5 candidates have been shortlisted, and we are going through the interview and evaluation process. Madam Speaker, a complementary reform to NARA addresses the investment attraction problem. We will introduce a new framework called FAST Jamaica, the Facilitated Acceleration of Strategic Transformation. This will be part of our national growth inducement strategy through investment. FAST Jamaica will establish a dedicated pathway to fast-track strategic priority investment projects critical to Jamaica's economic transformation, particularly those with an investment value of US $150 million or more that can commence implementation within a year and could be integrated into the NARA network of projects. The framework will focus on projects in sectors that will shape Jamaica's competitiveness, and we're looking at areas such as energy infrastructure, digital infrastructure and telecommunications, logistics, air and seaports, water, sewage and desalination, low-income housing and urban development, high-value tourism including wellness, medical and sports tourism, entertainment and the creative industries, STEM education and research, specialized healthcare, high-value agriculture and agro-processing, advanced manufacturing, and critical minerals, including rare earth elements. Cabinet will retain the ability to designate additional sectors where strategic opportunities arise. Central to FAST Jamaica will be a strategic investment council, a high-level body tasked with the initial screening and evaluation of major investment proposals. The elements of this already exist between JAMPRO, DBJ, and the Cabinet Office. The Council will assess the strategic merit, economic impact, and national interest considerations of each proposed project and will recommend to Cabinet the most appropriate development modality, whether public-private partnership, joint venture, concession arrangements, or otherwise, as well as whether the project should proceed through direct negotiation or a competitive process. Projects approved by Cabinet will be designated strategic investment projects and will benefit from accelerated approvals across government, coordinated regulatory engagement, and dedicated facilitation teams to ensure efficient execution. FAST Jamaica will also allow the government, where appropriate, to engage with unsolicited proposals from investors, recognizing that some of the most transformative projects originate from private sector proprietary knowledge. Madam Speaker, Fast Jamaica is not about weakening safeguards. It is about modernizing how government partners with strategic investors in a fast-moving global economy. Fiscal exposure will continue to be rigorously addressed by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Cabinet will retain full oversight of all final agreements, but what will change is the speed, coordination, and clarity with which Jamaica engages with major investment opportunities. Together, these reforms represent a fundamental shift in Jamaica's execution architecture. They answer the question that has haunted this nation for too long. Why does so much promise take so long to become a reality? We have accomplished a lot, but we could have accomplished so much more. So, Madam Speaker, NARA is established. We will have the legislation. I will table the legislation today. We have interviewed 5 shortlisted persons to become the executive officer. We will make a determination shortly. We have selected someone to head the oversight body, and we will have conversations with members of civil society, the opposition, and other interest groups to fill out that body. So NARA is established. The purpose of NARA is to take all the projects that we have had in development, or some of them in File 13, and all the new projects, and coordinate their implementation. It will work directly with the projects that the government is leading. But that is not going to be enough. We need to crowd in the private sector, and that is why we have FAST working in complement with NARA. And a typical way in which this will work, Madam Speaker, when I go to show you all the projects that NARA will likely do, you will see that there are great opportunities for the private sector to come in. Every highway that we put in opens up lands for housing, low-income housing, for tourism, for agriculture, for manufacturing. Madam Speaker, NARA's first and most consequential mandate will be to prepare a comprehensive project and economic plan to deliver within the next 4 years. And when we say deliver, we mean complete within the next 4 years. Today, I lay out a transformative vision for Jamaica by highlighting several national projects across the length and breadth of the country. Many of these projects are not new. They have appeared in development plans, consultancy report, policy discussions for years, in some cases for decades. This vision was never the problem. What was missing was the mechanism to convert them from aspirations into reality. The financing, the institutional architecture, and the enabling environment. We now have all of these. Some of these projects will be delivered through NARA, others will be executed through existing institutions and public-private partnerships operating alongside and in concert with NARA. What unites them all is a single coherent national vision. A Jamaica rebuilt stronger, planned smarter, connected more efficiently, and distributed more equitably. Where every region of this island is a functioning engine of growth, and where the resurgence we are claiming is visible, tangible, and felt in the daily lives of every Jamaican. I will highlight a few of these projects starting in the southwest. Black River. Madam Speaker, I want to start in Black River, because Black River tells a story that is larger than one town. It is the story of the existential vulnerability of low-lying coastal communities to the intensifying force of climate change. Black River is one of Jamaica's oldest and most storied towns. Founded in the 18th century, it was among the first places on this island to receive electricity, piped water, and the motor car, a proud maritime hub, the commercial heart of St. Elizabeth, gateway for the logwood and rum and pimento trade that shaped our economic history. The Georgian wooden houses along the waterfront, the masonry, mercantile buildings, the civic structures by the sea, all spoke to a town of character, history, and dignity. But Black River grew as many Caribbean coastal towns grew, parallel to the shoreline. Its hospital, its courthouse, its market, its homes, all concentrated along the coast, all exposed. For generations, that vulnerability was managed, tolerated, absorbed, but Hurricane Melissa ended that. Storm surges of 8 to 14 feet tore along the Crane Road corridor. The historic waterfront was devastated, civic buildings destroyed, critical infrastructure severely compromised. Madam Speaker, we will not rebuild Black River as it was. We will rebuild it as it should be. And in so doing, create something this town has never possessed in its 300 years of history: a real planned, consolidated urban core. The Urban Development Corporation, working with our development partners, is advancing a climate-resilient redevelopment plan that separates what belongs inland from what belongs on the coast. The heart of the plan is the new urban center, to be developed inland, safely above storm surge and projected sea level rise. And you can see a representation of where that urban center is going to be and what it, well, that's the waterfront, but what it could look like. So this is where Black River's essential public functions, its hospital, courthouses, municipal offices, police station, tax office, schools, market, and transport hub will be consolidated into a planned, workable, flood-safe precinct for the first time. It will have a proper town square, a civic park. The buildings will be designed to withstand Category 5 wind loads, built on elevated platforms above projected sea level rise scenarios with utility corridors, drainage infrastructure, and emergency redundancy. The historic waterfront will be protected by a layer of coastal defense systems, submerged offshore breakwaters to dissipate wave energy before it reaches shore, a concrete seawall integrated with a continuous public boardwalk and engineered revetments along the most vulnerable stretches of coastline. The waterfront will become what it always had the potential to be: a vibrant public amenity, an entertainment and tourism corridor, a place where boutique hotels and restaurants and cultural experiences make this stretch of Jamaica South Coast a genuine destination. So, the same questions that Melissa forced on Black River must now be confronted everywhere, and the answers must be guided by the same logic, applied consistently, deliberately, and at national scale. That logic can be distilled into 4 foundational principles that will guide how we plan, build, and invest going forward. The first principle is strategic spatial planning and risk-informed development. What happened in Black River happened because for decades, development decisions were made without regard to hazard mapping, flood risk, or climate projections. That must now change. Critical national infrastructure must progressively be relocated away from high-risk coastal zones hospitals, schools, utilities, highways, and logistic facilities must be positioned with full regard to storm surge, flooding, and sea level rise. Where we build is as important as what we build. The second principle is building redundancy in distributed systems across critical infrastructure. Black River Civic Core was concentrated in one exposed corridor. And when Melissa struck, a single surge compromised everything simultaneously. That is not resilience, that is fragility. Our transportation corridor, power systems, water supply, telecommunications, network, and logistic systems must be engineered with backup capacity and distributed architecture so that when one part of the system is struck, the rest keeps functioning. Resilience is incompatible with single points of failure. The third principle is the integration of regional development and resilient economic clusters. The Black River Plan does not end at the town's boundary. It connects to housing developments, agricultural corridors, tourism infrastructure, and the regional road network across the South Coast. That is intentional. Resilience cannot be built by project. It has to be built by a network. Connectivity, roads, hospitals, schools, housing, energy systems, and government services must be planned together to create a self-sustaining regional ecosystem. The fourth principle is economic diversification and production resilience. A resilient nation is not only physically strong, it is economically adaptable. Black River's rebuilt waterfront will anchor not just tourism, but wellness, marine recreation, heritage experience, and culinary offerings rooted in St. Elizabeth's agricultural identity. That diversification away from dependence on a single sector, any single market, any single source of economic activity is the model for Jamaica as a whole. We must broaden our productive base. Madam Speaker, the redevelopment of Black River will embody all four principles. It will be proof of concept that Jamaica has learned lessons and that we are determined to apply them not just to the historic town of the South Coast, that is the Black River, but to every parish, every corridor, and every community of this island that faces the same challenge as we seek to build forward stronger. Now, Madam Speaker, I know the people of Black River are anxious. Your MP, I could only describe it as anxiety. He's also anxious. Particularly persons who own property in proximity to the coast that sustained damage. There's a certain level of uncertainty. They're not sure whether or not they should rebuild, restart. Many of them have reached out to say, Prime Minister, I don't want to restart. In fact, there are several who have said, I was even contemplating coming out of business. Melissa's hastened the decision, but they want some indication so that they can figure out how to plan. And we hear on our side the magnitude and scale of what we are planning to do can't be rushed. We can't make wrong decisions. So we have to think these things out carefully, put in place the systems and the structure. So today I would have laid out for you the NARA, which will manage it, the legal framework under which it is going to be managed. So we are well there. So I would say to the people of Black River, we have identified suitable lands to support a structured program of relocation and reconstruction for housing and business. For businesses, the town of Black River, for businesses in the town of Black River, the UDC has been asked to begin dialogue with property owners regarding acquisition of property and location where necessary. Madam Speaker, I don't want to say too much here because I know how, what leaves here and lands there might be two different things. So I prefer that the entity, I have tasked them to go and start the dialogue, that they go and speak to the people directly. After agreement is reached, then you can speak publicly. Early next month, various agencies of the government will begin the consultations and sensitization with specific communities in Black River and along that corridor regarding relocation of our communities. The truth is there are just some communities that proximity to the swamp, threat from the sea, when we look at all of the risk maps that the best option is to relocate. But we know how difficult this is. And so we will handle this in a very sensitive way. We will ensure in a very transparent way as well. We will ensure that nobody is at a loss and that livelihoods are enhanced as a result of it. It is not something that is going to happen overnight. We acknowledge this, but it is something that we must do. So we will start the conversations individually with them. Madam Speaker, as you can see, there are several exciting transformational projects planned for the southwestern region, including Fonthill. Yes, with its world-class ecotourism potential, Fonthill is down for development. The airport in Little London, which was already announced, that will be brought on to the NARA project sheet. And the new urban center in Negril, that as well will be brought on to the NARA sheet. And I wanted to just draw your attention to the road network. There, the lines in red are showing you new highways and corridors that will be built. One of them will be the extension of the east-west highway from the William P. leg bypassing Spur Tree. And then there is another corridor which will not run on the coast, but more inland, but will connect to where the new Black River Urban Center will be. So all of these roads will be under NARA, and they will be started and completed within the next 4 years. In fact, these roads should be completed within the next 3 years. What we learned from the hurricane is that in the immediate few days, we did not have access. The roads were impassable, they were blocked. And, one of the problems was just how the road was built. We had no challenges with the highways. No highway was blocked because these roads were built to different standards, different drainage provisions were made. Now, St. Elizabeth, which didn't have it before, will now have 2 modern highways traversing the parish. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the northwest end of the island. Relax, man. No, but the member, just to put the member at ease. What I'm presenting here are large-scale reconstruction projects for Westmoreland, you would have heard what we're going to do with Negril and so forth. But for the other areas, it is mostly housing reconstruction. So I will address that. I will address that under a different modality. So, Madam Speaker, anyone who has driven from Montego Bay to Negril knows the bottlenecks at Hopewell and Lucy. This is not just a quality of life frustration, it is an economic cost. Every hour of unnecessary journey time is a deterrent to tourism investment, a disincentive to the visitor's experience, and a brake on the development of Hanover's enormous untapped potential. Madam Speaker, Hanover has so much potential, but it is, almost like an interland in Jamaica. And in the same way that we have opened up St. Thomas, we will open up Hanover for development. The government will advance the Hopewell and Lucy bypass, running through a connection point on the Long Hill bypass, which is already under construction. In St. James, traversing westward with Link Road serving both Hopewell and Lucy before terminating on the westward side of Lucy. The alignment will run approximately 3 kilometers south of the existing coastal road. This will unlock the entire waterfront stretch between Montego Bay and Negril as prime resort lands. In addition to the bypass, we intend to develop the Lucy Harbour into a premium boating destination. Sheltered from the prevailing winds, with deep natural water and proximity to emerging resorts on that belt between Montego Bay and Negril, Lucy Harbour has every natural attribute required to become a premium boating destination. So under NARA, this is something that we will do to create the economic incentive, but this is a perfect project for private sector. Yes. And so NARA will stimulate, facilitate, coordinate, but more than that, get it done quickly. The town of Lucy itself is similarly at risk for storm and wave action. In other words, it faces the same threats as Black River. In fact, probably worse, because Lucy is actually below sea level. So I wish to indicate here that consideration is being given to the eventual construction of a new town center for Lucy when the bypass that we have spoken about is complete. So we won't do it in this round. We can't take on too much, but let's do the bypass first, and then we do the new urban center. Madam Speaker, I want to talk about St. James, Montego Bay in particular. Recently, I was written to by one of the tourism interests in Montego Bay, expressing real concern about the state of the town, how it looks, the collection of garbage, the public facilities that are there, and there's a real concern raised, and I want the tourism community to know that the government hears your cry. We're not just sensitive, we are working to have it addressed. One of the big issues, which I know is a challenge, is the collection of municipal waste, the collection of garbage. And I'm sure Minister Mackenzie will address this at some point, but you recall when we said we have over 500,000 truckloads of debris to move. We have made a dent on it, but it has been at the expense of the diversion of the limited stock of equipment that we have from the municipal operation into the debris management operations. I think very shortly we will have to bring the debris management to either a pause or an end so that we can refocus on the municipal issues. So I want to indicate to the people of St. James, yes, we hear you, and we are going to address this problem in short order. Madam Speaker, Montego Bay is our tourism capital, and it is time we undertook new investments to revitalize and secure its position as the leading destination in the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa inflicted severe damage across Montego Bay, particularly in the coastal communities of Catherine Hall and West Green and Freeport. The destruction was painful, but it has given us something valuable, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine this corridor in a way that is bolder and more resilient. But we must first protect this city, which is a key pillar of Jamaica's economy. Montego Bay has long been vulnerable to flooding. Its rivers, when overwhelmed, have repeatedly brought misery to communities. The government will therefore undertake significant investments in river training to contain, manage, and direct floodwaters away from communities and commercial areas and critical infrastructure. The people of West Green and Catherine Hall will be very happy to hear this. And downtown Montego Bay, yes. Madam Speaker, the Montego Bay Freeport, its surrounding areas represent one of the most strategically valuable and scenically spectacular stretches of real estate in the entire Caribbean. It is home to our mixed-use cargo and cruise ship port and the Montego Bay Free Zone, and is flanked by major hotels, premium residential developments, and a forthcoming 28-story mixed-use hotel and residential complex, a powerful signal of the confidence that investors already place in this corridor. At the same time, the soon-to-be completed Montego Bay Perimeter Road is fundamentally reshaping the economic geography of the wider region, opening new corridors and unlocking additional lands for investment that were previously out of reach. Our plan is to gradually relocate the BPO and light industrial activities in the free zone to new purpose-built facilities along the Montego Bay Perimeter Road, catalyzing vibrant economic activity along the emerging corridor while providing modern, world-class, purpose-designed spaces. The thinking and the beauty of this strategy is that this will free up prime waterfront lands on the Freeport Peninsula for their highest and best use. We envision a landmark mixed-use development, commercial, retail, and premium residential seamlessly woven into the urban fabric of the city. Absolutely. Comparable in ambition and elegance to the celebrated Brickell waterfront in Miami. And at the heart of this vision will be a performing arts theater. It always is a puzzle to me. Every hotel has to have their own entertainment package. You know, we could invest in developing real premium entertainment if we had a proper performing arts center. You know, we could even invite Broadway to come and have plays there that the tourists would, instead of having to be stuck in the all-inclusives, they have somewhere to go. Locals can have somewhere to go. So the thinking, and you know, one thing with this government, we apply strategic thinking to everything. Everything. So, you know, when the Freeport was developed along the coast, very important that it was actually coastal, so that because it's close to the port as well, because the idea was like manufacturing, you get on a ship and you go. But things have kind of changed a little bit, because most of what the work that the Free Zone is doing has nothing to do with shipping. We ship it via email. In other words, the Freeport is now doing digital services, BPOs. They don't need to occupy valuable premium port land. So where they need to be is actually beside efficient public transportation. Absolutely. So people can get to work easily. Right now it's chaos to get into the Freeport. Yeah. So just this move is going to increase the efficiency of the town, but increase the value and productivity. and redirect traffic from outside of the town to allow Montego Bay to be able to breathe. Madam Speaker, the vision does not stop at Freeport. What we are proposing is the transformation of the entire coastal corridor, from the Freeport sweeping eastward to Harmony Park Beach, to Harmony Beach Park rather, along the waterfront, and all the way to the iconic hip strip. This breathtaking stretch of Caribbean coastline will be unified into one seamless, world-class leisure, entertainment, and shopping corridor. The top road. Minister, what's the proper name of the top road? The Queen's Drive.
Top road is like.
The president of Montego Bay. Top road, as we all know it. Very few people know it as Queen's Drive. The top road will be dualized, and it's a very important point. The top road will be dualized to handle traffic efficiently, while the bottom road will be progressively pedestrianized as well as the hip strip itself. The result will be a walkable waterfront of reality and vitality, connecting the cruise ship port to all the way to Harmony Beach Park and Doctor's Cave Beach, and every restaurant, bar, gallery, and shop along the hip strip. It's always an appointment, you know. We have a all-inclusive culture. We call it the all-inclusive. But really, if you think about it, it's really all-exclusive. Right? If it were truly all-inclusive, you would come to your hotel and you would be able to walk outside, go on the trip, go to the market, sit down in a restaurant. You would be able to move around the city. And that's what we when we talk about transforming tourism, that's what we really have to do. Right? We have to do that. So we're going to use the opportunity of Hurricane Melissa to just deal with these matters once and for all. Nara will deal with them once and for all. Madam Speaker, we are also examining ways to enhance the elegant corridor between Sangster International Airport and the Montego Bay Convention Center. You know, it's called the elegant corridor. I must tell you, it still has some elegance to it, but it needs a refresh. Yes, it needs a refresh. So we're going to be examining ways to do that. One of the big challenges with the elegant corridor, the Minister of Tourism will tell you, and I'm saying this for the hearing of those persons who operate hotels along the corridor, is the noise pollution. You see, Madam Speaker, when the North Coast Highway was being developed, that section was technically supposed to be a boulevard. Right? So, you know, in designing cities and towns, you know, streets lead on to boulevards. So streets empty traffic onto boulevards, and boulevards carry them onto highways. But what has happened is that this road is neither a boulevard or street, or it's playing all these roles. And it is carrying heavy traffic like a highway, but people have to exit to go into the hotels or go into the business places. Worst of all, and what really sometimes I'm very distressed when I see it, the hop, skip, and jump of workers trying to move across the road to get to the hotel. It doesn't make sense. So that entire elegant corridor has to be redefined and re-engineered to deal with soundproofing by building natural sound barriers, grade separation and tunneling so that you can move across, and building, because there is enough space in several areas to also build a kind of local road that connects all the hotels. Then you go under or over and you're onto golf course, or to really make the tourism product more seamless and of greater value. Greater.
Yeah.
Madam Speaker, Black River, Madam Speaker, like Black River, Falmouth is a case study in the existential vulnerability of low-lying coastal communities to the intensifying impacts of climate change. The flooding of the town, the failure of its drainage infrastructure, and the severing of its road connections during Hurricane Melissa were not random misfortunes. They were the predictable consequences of a town whose layout, institutions, and infrastructure were simply never designed for the climate realities we face today. We cannot simply rebuild what was there. We must fundamentally reorganize Falmouth.
Yeah.
I see, Madam Speaker, big smile on the Member of Parliament for North Trelawney, who, unlike most MPs, she actually lives in her constituency and lives in the town of Falmouth. All right, member from Southwest St. Catherine. The drag line, who else lives in their constituency? Good. Good, Rose, good. The drag line, the drag line, which is the critical drainage canal running east to west through the town, provides a natural organizing boundary. It is both the town's most important piece of infrastructure, and as Melissa demonstrated, it is the most neglected. Major infrastructure works will be undertaken to clean it and progressively modernize it into a functional water feature that both protects the town and enhances the remarkable Georgian character. Again, this will be a project on and off. But more than that, the drag line will serve as a boundary between two distinct and complementary zones of reimagined Falmouth. North of the drag line, closer to the sea, the focus will be on what the waterfront does best: tourism, heritage, recreation, and coastal protection. The magnificent Georgian historic core, the Albert George Market, the Falmouth Courthouse, the Tharp House Complex, the churches, and the Baptist Manse will all be preserved as far as possible. The cruise port and the waterfront will be enhanced and activated as world-class visitor experience. South of the drag line, we will build the resilient civic backbone that Falmouth has never had. The hospital will be relocated inland. It's a very important point, members. Madam Member of Parliament, we will be relocating the Falmouth Hospital inland. We have identified somewhere. We'll make that known as soon as we have finalized the land. And this will be away from the flood zone with direct access to the North Coast Highway so that it remains fully operational precisely when it is needed most. Madam Speaker, during the pandemic, I flew to the hospital again. And I want to commend all the hospital workers, but I wanted to commend the Falmouth workers in particular as I visited them. Very difficult circumstances, but like everywhere else, they were there doing their service. A new urban center will be built to modern standards of climate resilience and will consolidate critical public services and give people of Trelawney the standard of public facilities they deserve. Further south, and I want Minister Grange to pay attention to this one. Further south, anchored by the Trelawney Multipurpose Stadium at Florence Hall, we will finally deliver on the promise this facility has always held. We will be developing the area into a world-class sports center for sports training, major events, and sports tourism. While building around it vibrant housing and a commercial nucleus that brings permanent economic life to this corridor. Madam Speaker, we have had several proposals to use the Trelawney Stadium, but the government was never fully in a position because, Madam Speaker, to convert this into a sports tourism entity would require not just the facility. We would have to put in place infrastructure, water, proximity to working and resilient health facilities, proper housing, all the things that would be required to make such a facility work. So we were never in a position then to do it. But today, Madam Speaker, we are bringing all the infrastructure. We are bringing all the infrastructure together. So this can actually now become a center of economic activity in sports. The Minister of Tourism sent me a note to say that I forgot to mention the upgrade of the Montego Bay Convention Center. Yes, under these projects, the Montego Bay Convention Center will be upgraded in addition to the re-engineering of the Elegant Corridor. Madam Speaker, I now move to the northeastern section of the island. Madam Speaker, the North Coast Corridor and the Draxall and Miami Bay stretch in particular has become one of the most rapidly developing commercial zones in Jamaica. New businesses, new housing developments, new hospitality enterprises, and new entrepreneurial energy have concentrated in this corridor with remarkable momentum. The government wants to support and deepen that energy, not for it to be strangled by the congestion, but for it to be able to properly carry the traffic load of the area. On major event weekends, traffic snarl from miles from St. Anne into neighboring Trelawney. The North Coast Highway capacity has been exceeded by the very growth it helped generate. And attempting to upgrade a heavily used roadway while traffic is still flowing through it, as we learned from the South Coast Highway Improvement Project, causes disruption and dislocation that simply cannot be absorbed by communities and businesses that depend on the corridor for their livelihoods. The solution is to build the alternative first. Detailed feasibility studies are being completed for the North-South Highway Extension Project. The proposed extension consists of two segments branching from a new grade separated interchange near Miami Bay, westward to Discovery Bay in St. Anne, and eastward to Tower Isle in St. Mary. Together, these extensions will create a high-speed tolled alternative to the existing North Coast Road, diverting through traffic away from the congested commercial corridor, reducing journey times dramatically and unlocking the tourism and investment potential of the wider North Coast and St. Mary to the western parishes. Once the North-South Highway extension is sufficiently advanced, the North Coast Highway Improvement Project will follow, upgrading the existing alignment from Montego Bay to Draxall, including the dualization of key sections where traffic volumes and safety demands require it. The Draxall corridor is not a problem to be managed. It is a success story to be expanded. With this investment, we give it the infrastructure it deserves, and we unlock the next chapter of growth along Jamaica's most visited coastline. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the eastern end of the island, Port Antonio. Port Antonio is unlike anywhere else in Jamaica. It is the birthplace of Caribbean tourism. The town that first showed the world what Jamaica could be, drawing Hollywood legends, royalty, and the world's most discerning travelers to its twin harbors and extraordinary natural setting. It deserves a future worthy of that legacy. As I have reported to this Honourable House on previous occasions, the Port Authority of Jamaica, working with international consultants, town residents, elected officials, and government agencies, developed a master plan for Port Antonio built around a clear and compelling vision. A high-value, low-density tourism destination that preserves the unique history and character of this irreplaceable town while unlocking its enormous unrealized potential. We are now moving from planning to delivery, starting with the Port Antonio bypass. Madam Speaker, sometimes, I'm doing this now 11 times and going through all the projects and the plans. I can just imagine that the people listening might say, but you said this already, or here goes another plan. But the beautiful thing is that having seen these plans from conception to inception, it is just an amazing feeling. So I recall when we were doing the discussion about how are we going to develop this beautiful asset of Port Antonio. And we recall that when the sewer lines were being put in, I believe by the position at the time was government, the chaos it created in the town.
We got the money.
Well, yes, we got the money, but they implemented. Right. So, but it was chaos in the town, just to put in the sewer lines. And so the thought was, if we can't do any further development in the town, because the development itself may kill the town. So what we have to do first is to do the bypass. We have to create an alternative so that traffic can flow whilst we do, because of the significant development. So we are done the project, and Madam Speaker, and I'm now pleased to say that the project man is man, woman is woman. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to say that this project has started. This is an $81 million project, and it is an essential precondition for everything else the master plan will seek to achieve. This 18-kilometer corridor will be delivered in 2 phases. The first spanning Norwich to Turtle Crawl Harbour, and then 7 kilometers of 4-lane roadway, new bridges and upgraded drainage, built inland and elevated to protect against storm surges and coastal erosion. By diverting through traffic away from the historic town centre, the bypass will give Port Antonio the space it needs to become the premium destination the master plan envisions. Beyond relieving congestion, the bypass will open new corridors for housing, commerce, and economic activity. And as I've said, works has already begun. The broader master plan will deliver 4 transformational elements: a new cruise terminal in the East Harbour, paired with high-end hotels and villas on the Folly Lands, which will establish Port Antonio as a premium cruise destination unlike any other in the region, intimate, authentic, and famed by some of the most spectacular scenery in the Caribbean. The cricket grounds will be enhanced into a modern multi-purpose sports and entertainment amphitheatre, activating this underutilized asset and bringing major events to Portland for the first time. A new pedestrian promenade along the shoreline will connect the east and west harbors, transforming the waterfront into a continuous walkable space for residents and visitors alike. And a new public park will give the people of Portland a world-class recreational amenity on their doorsteps. Madam Speaker, just to be clear, these pictures that you are seeing are not just, promotional rendering. Actual architectural design work has gone into this. All right. Complementing all of this, Madam Speaker, is the Boundbrook Urban Center. So you hear me talk about we're going to build our urban center. We are building urban centers. The Boundbrook Urban Center is approximately 40% complete. Like the Morant Bay Urban Center, Boundbrook will be an integrated commercial hub combining public and private services seamlessly in one location. Madam Speaker, the development, the new port, and I want this is the Morant Bay Urban Center. Well, the bypass starts there. So it connects there. So, Madam Speaker, the development of a new port in St. Thomas has been discussed for some time. The original intent was to develop an aggregate port to serve the growing demand for construction materials in regional markets such as Guyana and Suriname. However, Hurricane Melissa fundamentally expanded our thinking. Hurricane Melissa served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of Jamaica's southern coastal line and the existential threat that a direct strike on Kingston would pose to the port of Kingston, and by extension to the nation's ability to recover from any such disaster. As a result, the government will now not only develop an aggregate port for export, but one with capacity for mixed usage, such as the Reynolds Pier in St. Anne. This port will serve as a critical backup to the port of Kingston in the event of a major disaster, while simultaneously driving economic growth and creating much needed employment opportunities for the people of St. Thomas. Subject to more detailed feasibility studies, the Port Authority has identified a site near Yala, St. Thomas, that benefits from adequate coastal depth and vessel berthing, proximity to established quarry operations, and road access via the newly completed highway. Madam Speaker, the Port of Kingston is now one of the fastest growing ports in the entire hemisphere, and we are determined to ensure that our infrastructure keeps pace with that growth. We are undertaking a series of transformational projects that together will create the largest concentration of near-port logistic lands anywhere in the Caribbean. The first of these is the $80 million Westland project, already underway, which will add 15 acres to the Kingston Freeport terminal, increasing cargo storage capacity by more than 25%. The second involves the realignment of Marcus Garvey Drive to the northeast of Tinston Pen and the incorporation of the Tinston Pen lands into an expanded near-port corridor. No, it's our constituency. A portion of these lands is already being actively utilized for automobile logistics, a clear signal of Kingston's emergence as a regional hub in a dynamic sector and a preview of the far greater potential that lies ahead. Madam Speaker, inadequate drainage infrastructure along this corridor has resulted in disruption of operations from even moderate rainfall. The National Works Agency, in collaboration with local and international consultants,